The Greens and the Coalition uniting for a noble cause. How to fix the cost of living crisis.
To speak directly to industry, to peak bodies, to consumers, to charity groups and not-for-profits, and to find out from them what their solutions are to the cost of living crisis.
From BP to Woolworths, Coles and the RBA, all the big hitters have fronted the inquiry. But the grilling that's grabbing headlines, Qantas and outgoing CEO Alan Joyce.
Hello, this way.
Joyce summoned to appear just 4 days after the airline posted an underlying $2.47 billion annual profit, funded in part by job cuts and a 32% hike in fares.
This is a remarkable turnaround, 3 years in the making.
But today, Joyce was on the defence.
There's a lot of criticism of corporate profits at the moment, due in large part to the cost of living pressures happening in parallel, and we understand that.
Doubling down on his opposition to a bid by Qatar Airways to put on extra flights to Australia.
Are you telling this committee that had Qatar been granted those 21 routes, the airfares would not have come down?
Qatar can still add a lot of capacity to this market. Australia should protect its own national interest.
And fighting back against claims of slot hoarding, that Qantas has been deliberately cancelling flights to stifle the competition.
Isn't it true that Qantas actually has no intention of flying those flights?
Qantas is now the most on-time and the lowest level of cancellations.
And accusations that Qantas misled customers, withholding refunds for cancelled flights during the pandemic.
I know you love a good explanation, but I have limited time. How many flight credits is Qantas Group holding?
We're sitting on about $360 million of Australian customers' credit.
How many overseas credits are there?
You can come back to
You're not sure. My goodness. You are not being transparent.
Clipping the wings of the outgoing CEO of the Flying Kangaroo.
Yeah, we do have to get to
A flight? Funny that.
We're leaving on time.
I'm sure it'll be delayed.
Well, 10 News First's political editor, Ashley Raper, is in Canberra. Ashley, what did you make of Alan Joyce's performance?
Look, it was what you'd expect, and it was a performance that you'd expect from Alan Joyce. And with a Senate inquiry and Senate committee, yes, there's a very serious point to it. It's a cost of living inquiry, but it also has a performative aspect. You have senators wanting to grill Alan Joyce, wanting to look tough with Alan Joyce. And in terms of Alan Joyce's performance, he started with an opening statement. He was very measured in that. He tried to explain the high airfares. He conceded there were high airfares, but said that they have peaked and they're going down, explained why that happened. Overall, Alan Joyce got through this relatively unscathed.
Ashley, I guess we've got to remind ourselves one of those senators was Tony Sheldon, of course, who used to run the Transport Workers Union, who's never been a great mate of CEOs of Qantas. This organisation, this inquiry is going to look at all sorts of aspects of the cost of living crisis. It did feel a little like a pile-on on Qantas. How did the senators go? Did they land any punches, do you think?
Not really. And yes, it was very much looked like it was very Qantas focused today, but that's because it was. It was just specifically on Qantas and their airfares, and also looking at competition in the market. Now, in terms of Tony Sheldon, yes, that was probably the most fiery exchange of the whole thing today. And what it was revealed, now there are a number of credits for customers left for cancelled flights during the pandemic, and Qantas has put that figure at $400 million worth of credits that are yet to be claimed. Today, Tony Sheldon asked Alan Joyce about those credits, and he said, does that $400 million, is that just for Qantas or is it for other things? And there was an admission from Alan Joyce today that it didn't include Jetstar, and perhaps it didn't include those who had travelled overseas. So that $400 million, it's been revealed today, is in fact more.
Wow. That'll go down well. I'm fascinated in this Qatar Airways situation where it seems Qantas might have lobbied the government not to let Qatar Airways put more flights into Australia, reduces competition, sends prices up. Did Joyce give anything on this?
Now, the opposition was very keen and they did question after question on this issue. Now, Alan Joyce was quite open that, yes, that as an airline, you go to the government, you make representations. He's saying that's not uncommon, and it's not just Qantas that does that, but they kept coming back and back. And Alan Joyce was very clever in batting away all questions, saying that there is an open market, it is about being fair, and ultimately it is up to the government. So it now goes back, the onus really goes back now on the federal government, whether it was the right decision to block the extra services and what that means for anti-competition. Now, there was a question put to the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, who's currently in Perth, about this suggestion that perhaps the Albanese government runs a protection racket for Qantas. He was having none of that. He just said that Alan Joyce is an outgoing CEO and that Qantas is an important company. He did not want to deal with that issue at all.
OK. Ashley Raper, thank you.
Of course, we've got to remember Alan Joyce will be out of the role by the end of the year, and Vanessa Hudson's the new CEO. She'll have to deal with all of this. So they're putting Alan out there to take all the hard questions. But this goes both ways. If Qantas wants to fly into various places around the world, they've got to lobby and get access. So it goes both ways.
But it's different, right? Because in other countries, those are national airlines that are run by the government. This is meant to be a commercial operation.
But it's never been treated that way.
Right, and because in the end, you can say, well, it's just a market. But if prices are going up because the government's not giving access to other competitors, that's effectively travellers being taxed, right?
I still call Australia home. That's the point.
Yes, I'm glad you still call Australia home, Steve. That's very nice of you.